Hey guys, I originally did this and I didn't check my microphone inputs, and the audio that accompanied the video didn't really work. You couldn't hear a thing, so I'm redoing this as an audio recording and then putting it over the original video. Maybe I'll be a little quicker with it. The original was like 45 minutes long, and I don't know how people like to sit through all that, but I had a lot to say. And basically, this is going to just kind of be a video that I can point people to when they ask me, the usual questions. Do you have tips? Do you have this? Do you have that? For people starting comics and projects and getting started drawing. Now, you can't, there's no way to convey skill over the internet. There's no way to convey it in a paragraph or in spoken word. That's just something that has to come with a little bit of inclination combined with a lot of practice and a lot of work and a lot of just being inspired to work over and over again. So it's not your skill and your amazement at your skill and the pleasure of drawing that is necessarily driving you. It's the urge to create. So that even when your work sucks, and like I'm going to say that my work for most of, as long as I've been doing this, has kind of sucked, in my opinion. But I always had that urge to just make pictures, make stories, make characters, and this keeps you going forever. If you don't really have that, there's not really a sense of advice I can give you when it comes to creating and writing comics and coming up with story ideas. I wish there was an easy way to do it, but I can't, There are some artists who just focus on doing commissions. They say, I just don't have creative or original ideas. I just want to draw. And they're more than happy taking commissions and working with other people's ideas, and that's fine. But that's not something I can relate to, so I can't really make a recording based on that. Okay, so the advice I would give to people starting out is start working on a distinct and recognizable style. Have people be able to look at something you drew and or created and kind of know right away, oh, that's that guy. That's her. I like her stuff. I like his stuff. And that's real important. And you can have a style that's kind of derivative of someone else's established style, someone who's already kind of made it and is popular, in the sense that you can look at their work and go, oh, that's how they connect those lines, or that's the kind of way that they render this aspect of whatever. But you want to make sure you don't fall into the trap of being kind of a clone. I know that for every now and then there's like an artist that pops up and their work looks a lot like Wolfie Nail's work, Everything kind of vaguely looks like it, or like Miles DF or something like that will sort of spin off a lot of derivative styles in other people. And I mean, for good reason. These are pretty skilled people, and the compositions that they do, especially Wolfie Nail, is pretty amazing as far as cartoons go. But if you get to the point where you're able to sort of fall into a derived style, you still want to strive for greater distinction and individuation in your own work. And this is something that can happen naturally over time. It may not be a conscious thing you do, but it is something that is pretty important in making your work stand out. When I got involved in this, there were not nearly as many people in it. Talking about furry in particular, but this can count for any fandom, really, anime, whatever. And so, would I be nearly as successful if I had just started today? I can't say that, because I've been doing this literally for about over 2 decades, just working on comics and drawing and characters and little stories and here and there. And so, I can't just say, well, here's how you become successful in 1 year. There's not I don't have that blueprint, right? Here's how you distinguish your style over the course of 1 year. I don't have that blueprint. When I first started out, and this is 90s, like late 90s stuff, everyone looked at my work and a lot of people immediately said, hey, this is really good. It looks like a blend of Eric Schwartz and Sean Howell. You may not even know who those names are because they're very old school furry. They've been doing this for a long time, but people's brains instantly go to association. That's just the way the human mind works. Don't take offense at that if that's what happens to you. Just work on individuating yourself over time, and that will help you become distinct, and that people who like your style will gravitate to what you do. Again, about references, if you want to use other people's art as reference for how they construct lines and things like that, that's pretty good. Go ahead and kind of take them as tips. Don't trace, just take them as tips. Don't copy. Just look at, oh, that's one way to do that, that kind of thing. Now, people will argue about the practical application of tracing as a learning tool. I've never been in support of tracing. There are people who swear that it's fine. I hate it because, one, there's nothing you can learn from tracing, whether it's hand control or anything of the sort, that you don't learn from just freehand drawing and looking at reference or anything else when you're not tracing. You learn everything you learn from tracing by freehand drawing anyway. Okay, so tracing is and just looking at a piece. And I think you're exercising more of your brain muscles for how to construct a picture when you're freehand drawing, even if you're looking at something else for reference. Okay, but when you're tracing, you're shutting off parts of your brain. You're using a handicap. You'll never be able to walk if you're always holding crutches or using a wheelchair. You know what I'm saying? You'll have to get up out of it eventually. You have to begin using those muscles of creation. And I think that as long as you're tracing, you're sort of making your progress much more slow. You're just learning how to make those lines. What you're not doing, and what you're seeing in this video here that I put together of me drawing red swimming, all digitally, is you see the skeletal construction underneath. You see how you're forming 3D shapes and you're moving them in different angles to show different camera angles and different depictions. You don't get any of that from tracing. All you get is outline. And ultimately, that's not what you want to learn, is just outline. You want to learn shape because things are shapes. And if you're going to draw and depict things, you have to get used to that. One more little thing about being distinct is if you're going to put a signature on your piece, and I know at one part in the video I put like a little signature down here, but it's probably going to be off right here because I'm just going to dump this on top of the image or the video, is make sure if you have a weird squiggly signature, it does no one any good if they find your picture on a message board or if someone shares it on Tumblr, they reblog, or they do whatever it is that they do. People are going to do that on the internet. That's fine. If you want to fight it, be my guest, but I would rather be drawing something new. But the point is, turn it into an ad. If you have a squiggle like an M with a line through it, people go, oh, this is a really good piece. This is interesting. I wonder where I can find more of his. Oh, okay. His signature is just a squiggle with a line through it. I don't even know his name. I couldn't even Google him if I wanted to. So put your URL on there. Put a URL to your public gallery or your Patreon page, whatever. Make sure it's distinguishable so people know who did this. Okay. And it's not just a shape or a line. So bear that in mind. When you're working, work with a minimum of distraction. This is pretty important and something that a lot of people miss because I myself have been guilty of this. You kind of work with the internet on right beside you. And it can be distracting. You end up turning and doing things really quick on the internet and turning back. And pretty soon, something that should have taken you 2 hours takes you 4 or 5. And that's kind of a time kill. And and drawing becomes more of a burden on your day. And also, you can be more creative when your mind is quiet and you're not constantly. You need to have those quiet moments where your brain is alone. You're not constantly getting input from other people. You're not constantly obsessed with social interaction. You're not constantly checking social media and doing whatever it is people do on social media. So these things are the enemies of creativity because they give you a constant stimulus. The brain doesn't have to come up with anything on its own. Okay? Try being alone for a while. Try going for a walk. Go to a park and think about things. Think about the kind of characters you like and what you want to embody. Think about the kind of characters you see. Think about the kind of things you don't see in comics and cartoons, literature, stories, whatever. And gosh, wouldn't it be great if there was a character like that, or there was a thing like that? Let me draw it. Let me create that. That's where a lot of these ideas come from. I know myself, I work in adult work. That's where I make my bread and butter. And a lot of the stories and ideas that I have for sort of just themes overall, well, they come from a human psychological standpoint. I kind of inject that sort of thing into my stories, but they come from the fact that I just didn't see a lot of the kind of things I wanted to see, or that I thought were possible, that no one was tackling. I would look at other people's adult comics, and they were very simple. They had very trite stories that were just vehicles for delivering something. And I try to do a little bit more. Although you can argue whether I succeed or I fail. That's fine. I understand. And I know that there are projects where I haven't done as well as I want to, but I still have a goal that I try to strive for. And again, that also goes towards individuation. Instead of on the art side, it goes to on the theme side, on the feeling side, on everything else. So, okay. You got to build your brand over years and years and years. And again, this goes back to enjoying what it is you do, or having this urgency to do what it is that you do. It isn't a joy. It isn't like a pleasure. It's not like playing a thrilling video game or riding a theme park ride or eating a dessert or whatever, where while you're in the moment, there's a tangible, tactile pleasure of what it is you're doing. There's an emotional pleasure, a visceral pleasure. Drawing isn't really like that. You may like it, and when you were a kid, you may have had that pleasure, but when it becomes work and it's not that fun anymore, because you're drawing things that you have to draw, that you have planned out ahead of time, that you have to draw, and the whims of inspiration might not be there at that moment, but you do it anyway. Because as you age and mature, and some people get this earlier, some people get this later, but this is something you need to strive for. You're not looking for moment-to-moment pleasure. You're not pleasure seeking, right? You're looking for satisfaction. You're looking for achievement and accomplishment and the pleasure of being productive. And when you're done, you can then have pleasures guilt-free. Okay. And you're looking for that sensation of, today I did this. And so it's that goal at the end of the tunnel. That's what is driving you to work, even if you kind of want to do something else instead. You know what I mean? But you're not a slave to that kind of drive. So that comes to building your brand over the years, putting out consistent projects, consistent comics, consistent characters that people start to gravitate towards and want to kind of learn more about and get interested in. And you will build a fan base over time. Determine whatever your niche is and whatever your fandom is, whether it's manga or furry or whatever. Sort of determine where you're most comfortable, where you like to work, and what kind of characters you want to illustrate. And then if you have a niche within that, if you do guys with big swords, or you do a certain niche within the furry fandom, focus on that niche and see where it takes you, see where you're most comfortable. And that alone will help you sort of progress. And we talked about regardless of your skill level, and also have a moment where you're creating what you want. Because unless you're just a pure artist, you're one of those artists that doesn't have creative ideas, you just want to draw other people's ideas, or you just want to draw fan art of established things. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. In that case, just draw what comes to mind or what is given to you as an assignment. But if you are a creator, if you have your own character ideas, your own story ideas, then put aside time to make sure you at least work on some of that. And draw every day. Drawing should be foremost on your mind. Creating something, working at a table, drawing in front of the television, whatever it is you have to do. If you're working a regular job, all you're thinking about all day long is sitting down and creating that thing. If you go through work all day long and think, wow, it'd be really great to to have a successful web comic or to have a fan base and get some support from it. But then you go home and you just can't stop yourself from booting up Fortnite and playing it for like until you go to bed. Then this isn't really for you. You know, you're not a creator. You're just a consumer, and maybe creation isn't for you. Okay. If you don't have an idea, maybe creation isn't for you. Get an idea first, an idea that inspires you enough. And when that inspiration fades in the middle of your project, and it will, you're going to have to fall back on what I said earlier, what your original motive is, your adult, mature motive of having an accomplishment. I accomplished this today. I made, over the last month or 2 months or 3 months, I created this 24-page comic story thing. You know, I created this character. I created this backstory. That has to be what drives you. If when your inspiration of the immediate moment fades, and you just stop and you boot up a video game and just, you know, smoke a bowl or whatever it is you do in your spare time, then again, maybe this isn't for you. Maybe grow a little bit. Maybe think a little more. You always realize that. And I had a friend of mine who he was an old school furry artist, extremely talented, extremely unique style, very popular amongst the people who saw his work, and he was always sort of waiting and practicing and wanting to work on his ultimate, definitive, creative project, right? And he had this whole fantasy world made with these characters, and he was going to write this ongoing story with illustrations, and it was very interesting. And he was like, I'm not as good as I want to be yet. I want to get there. Never mind that everyone loved his stuff and he was great. So, one, you're never think of what you're doing as your magnum opus. Like, this is your penultimate project. This is what's going to be what people remember you for decades. Forget about all that. The market will determine what your magnum opus is. You're just doing whatever inspires you. So, I'm reading, I got started reading a lot of Masamune Shiro graphic novels and whatever. When he was doing Appleseed, I'm sure he was very much into it. Okay. They made an anime movie out of it. It was just another anime movie, but he did like 4 gigantic volumes of story about it. And then he did Orion, and he did Dominion Tank Police, and I think Tank Police also had some anime movies made regarding it. And then, then again, they were just anime movies that were lost in the sea of anime movies. But all his work was very interesting, and it was very well executed, in my opinion. A little goofy, a little tropey, but I mean, that's manga, right? And then he did Ghost in the Shell, okay, which I think the success of Ghost in the Shell was so over the top. Movie after movie derived from it, TV show after TV show after TV show. I think it was his peak. But I don't think he ever considered any one project he was going to do as his magnum opus. I think he considered every single one of them was, this is what I'm inspired to do. I want to do the next chapter, and I want to do the next chapter, and the next one, and the next one, and then it's done. Time to move on to something else. I have another idea, you know. And now, as far as I can tell, he doesn't do anything manga. He just draws Grease Girl calendars, as far as I can tell, and just sits on his butt and chilling with all of his Ghost in the Shell money. I mean, more power to him, you know, he made it. And my point, getting back to what I was talking about originally, the guy who waited and waited, and he didn't want to start something because he wanted it to be as good as he thought he should be. And then he ended up, I haven't heard from him in years. I have no idea what he's up to. And he was able to support himself with a regular job pretty well, and he did. And so he's comfortable. He doesn't have that fire under his ass to get creative. And as a result, you know, he doesn't do anything. So don't procrastinate. Don't wait until you're good enough, quote unquote. You'll get good enough as you do it. You know, people say, well, how do you draw? I know how to draw pictures. I don't know how to draw comics. How do you draw comics? I say, well, go draw comics. That's how you learn how to draw comics. And yeah, originally they might suck. You might realize things are off, or things don't, or how do I get this to flow? And if you want to know about how comic books flow, look at established good comics. Look at the framing techniques that they use. Look at movie storyboards. Even that can tell you a lot of good things about how people create. And get things to kind of flow in a way, and how they use camera angles, and how you use close-ups for quick moments, and you use backups for establishing long shots or changing location. You need an establishment shot and all these other things. I've actually done some tutorials on comic pacing, and maybe I'll do one in a video someday, but we're getting into the weeds on creativity, on the specifics here, and I don't want to take up too much time on that. So also, in part of building your brand is to publish in as many places as you can stand to keep up with. I publish my work on about 3 public gallery spaces, not including my art-only Twitter account. And sometimes Facebook, I'll post like a rough photo of a sketch I did on the couch or something like that. Just get your work out there, get it circulating, get eyes on it. The more places it's at, the more likely someone will stumble on it with their eyeballs. But don't, if too many sites are too much to keep up with or bother with, don't worry about it. Also it depends on your fandom and your niche. If you're specializing in doing hentai manga or whatever, get a hentai foundry account. If you're furry, do whatever. Get a Tumblr account. I know Tumblr is goofy and weird, but it is a place where people take pictures and share them all over the place a million times to a bunch of different people. So it doesn't hurt. And your Tumblr page doesn't have to be as dumb as everyone else's. So always bear that in mind. For Affinity, it's kind of a trash site. It's an old shitty site. It's mismanaged and crappy and full of cancer, but there are a lot of people there. And if you are a furry artist, you kind of can't ignore the number of eyeballs that go through that site on a daily basis. So always bear that in mind. And you're building your brand over years and years and years. And in 5 years' time, you'll have all this established work. You'll have a body of work you can fall back on and a fan base that's willing to go with you anywhere. And you could see success in Patreon or any other endeavor that you wish to pursue, because people are interested in what you specifically are doing. Next, be decent to your fans. This is something I've kind of failed on early and when I got started. I was very young. I was kind of aggressive and scrappy on the internet, and I got into fights. Don't do that. Don't do that because, well, one, you want to keep your public persona separate, not your public persona, but your professional persona on the internet separate from your personal life. Now, I'm not saying you can't espouse things or have an opinion. You can just dump an opinion, and if someone, even today, sometimes when someone engages me and they're incorrect, or I want to offer a countering opinion, I'll offer a countering opinion for 1, maybe 2 exchanges, and then just state my piece and then move on. Because you don't want to get wrapped up, because it's just going to take time away from you creating. You don't want to get wrapped up in a big, these people who spend just hours and hours on places like Twitter and just venting their, I don't know, just sort of bleeding out their heart on this site or that site, getting so angry, and they're not being productive at all. You really want to avoid that stuff. Don't do anything online that doesn't make you money or make you happy. That's a good rule to live by. Just state your piece. Smart people will understand what you're doing, and that's all you care about are smart people. You don't care about the idiots and dummies and whatever else. People who want you to be something evil, like a straw man that they can then set a torch to. And there's kind of a sport on the internet in that respect. And this kind of leads into, let your work be your entertainment. Don't let your life be your entertainment. So you want people to want your work, not, and sometimes when your work gets popular, people also get interested in you as an artist. You get messages from people saying, hey, I hope we can be friends. And you're like, well, I mean, whatever, friends have to happen naturally. I don't know what to say to that. They don't just, it's not just based on a hope or a wish. But more to the point, your life, who your friends are, who you like, what you do in your spare time. You can have personal pages like Facebook and maybe even your Twitter or whatever, where you just talk about your personal life, and that's fine. Normal people do that. But a lot of things you see, especially if you go to pages like Fur Affinity, where people's Fur Affinity page almost becomes like their old MySpace page. It just gets decorated with every facet of their existence, and you find out who's doing what, who lives where, what their opinion or something. Are they, this person likes fascism, this person likes communism, and you're like, what the fuck is all this shit? And then they're dating this person. My favorite one is this is my boyfriend, this is my pet, this is my, you know what I mean? And it's like, wow, okay. I call it furry polygamy, where you have multiple boyfriends or girlfriends. You just give them different labels in your life. And it's this weird sort of web of who cares? Like, if you're an artist and people like your work, that's all that matters. They don't care who you're dating. Don't talk about it. And if people who do care what you're dating, tell them to mind their own business. It doesn't matter. Don't advertise who you see. And there's people who do want to do that. You see that shit with modern celebrities on tabloid shelves and everything like that. And there's a small version of that happens in fandoms, and you don't need it. You don't even need to comment on it. That would be my advice, because there's a thing about sport outrage on the internet. People love to have opinions about shit that just doesn't fucking matter. And they love to blow things up way out of proportion to how important they really are in life. Don't do it. Don't get involved in it. Don't let people do it to you. I think that I'm trying to get my thoughts back on track here. I'm going to get ahead a little bit when I say, let your work speak for itself. So if you're doing anything creative, especially anything that has stories and characters in it that are distinct and individuated, you're going to get people who will interpret things, especially today. Now, when I started decades ago, this was happening, 15, 16 years ago, this was a problem. And now it's only gotten worse. Although there is a more prominent backlash against it these days, which is a good thing, where people will interpret, you'll have your sort of internet crusaders, people call them, social justice warriors. You'll have your Anita Sarkeesians types and people like that who will, I remember hearing her say that, yeah, when you start looking, you find that everything is sexist, everything is problematic. That's a quote from her. She said in an interview. It's like, sure, well, when you make yourself a hammer, the entire world becomes a nail. And when it's all you're looking for, and by the way, you're also making a lot of money finding it, you're going to keep finding it. And really what you're doing is you're construing it because there's some kind of hypersensitivity that you have, or you feel good bad-mouthing or criticizing someone, And there are people like that. They don't feel like they're sounding intelligent unless they're criticizing something. That's where a lot of stuff comes from. And it's important as a creator to be able to distinguish when someone's doing that versus when someone actually has a legitimate thing that you should be listening to about improving what it is you might do. And taking good advice and being able to understand good advice is a good thing. And if there's a lot of malcontent, maybe take that to heart too a little bit. Say like, well, maybe I don't have to be so heavy-handed in the messages of my stories if I don't need to be, if I can be gentler, if I can have ideas as greater abstractions that pertain to everyone's life regardless of what their opinions are, if I can focus on things that universally apply to everyone regardless of what their opinions are, and then as those principles filter out, they'll become better people overall. No one's going to focus and get all in lockstep with your opinion and everything like that. And you don't want to focus your work solely for people who agree with your conclusions. You want them to appreciate your principles, not your conclusions. Your conclusions can come later, but as long as everyone is thoughtful, we can all get along better. And again, let your work speak for yourself. If someone decides that what you did was homophobic, transphobic, racist, whatever bullshit, if they think you're a closet Nazi or whatever, closet fascist, because you wrote a story that had a theme like this, or you had a character who has this background and they made a decision that this person disagrees with, therefore you think all people like this are evil or whatever the hell their problem is, know that it's grandstanding and it doesn't really serve a point. It serves to have them feel good about themselves because they're outraged about something that they perceive as wrong, when really thoughtful people will see this and look at the work and go, yeah, that's not what that is at all. This is just a story about this. And I like, and I may have said this before in other videos, but there are works that people have of mine that people like just really, really bash and make fun of. And people did this all through when I was doing my Better Days webcomic and my Original Life webcomic. And I would get fan mail from people, emails from people saying, yeah, I heard people talking about this thing, and I was laughing along with them. And I went to the website, you know what I mean, to see what kind of a shit show this was going to be, their words. And I started reading, and then I kept reading, and then I couldn't stop reading, and then I read the whole thing in a day and a half. And I want to let you know, and I don't know what they're talking about. This isn't like that at all. They're obviously greatly exaggerating certain things in order to find offense and make fun of you and all these other things. And so what you'll notice is that people who are who are capable of thinking and who don't just want you to be bad, you know what I mean? People who are honestly looking at your stuff objectively, they'll know that the work speaks for itself. I could just keep saying that over and over again. The work speaks for itself. And always let your work speak for itself. If you have to defend it against, verbally, if someone says your work is this and you say, no, it isn't, it's actually this, and they come back insistent, just don't talk to them anymore. It gets into that getting into a fight thing. You know what I mean? Because you've already said what it is. I mean, you fucking know what it is because you did it, right? Who the fuck is this guy? This is just some hypersensitive, the whole world is evil kind of person. Fuck them, right? Do what you have to do as a creator. As a creator, doing your own IPs, your own stories, and your own properties. Not as a creator taking over a legacy of an IP, like something that, like if you go to work for like Marvel or something like that, and you want to make Spider-Man gay for no reason, maybe not. Maybe don't do that, okay? Maybe honor the legacy of who Spider-Man is supposed to be. All right, let's just go there. But in your own stuff, yeah, your creative vision should prevail, and you shouldn't mollify it because of a bunch of screeching, hypersensitive idiots who slam their door in their parents' faces, and they don't even know which gender bathroom to use. So, don't spend time. A good business sense, but lying and deceit and bailing out on promises is destined to damage your brand. I've seen this happen time and time and time again. It's horrible. I see artists who open for commissions, scoop up a whole bunch of commissions, and they find themselves buried under them, and then they've already spent all their money, thousands and thousands of dollars worth of this stuff, and a lot of them try to reset. They'll hide away for a few months, pop up as a completely different account, and try to do it all over again. Well, people on the internet will find you. They'll know exactly what happened. And in the worst cases, this can be a crime. This is theft by deception. You've basically promised to do something and you just ran off with the money and spent it. Come up with, if you don't trust yourself to do these things, come up with a scheme that will make you do them. When I was doing commissions, I didn't let myself get paid a dime until I did the rough sketch and it was approved by the person I was doing it for. What that meant was, here's how it's going to look roughly in pencils. And it was very dirty and scribbly. And they have to then approve it. Okay. And then they pay me. And once I've already done the sketch, that's the hard part. Everything else is just process. And I can do that. I can throw on a lecture or a movie and just do the process. That's easy, So I did most of the work as far as the effort goes. The starting, once you break around, proceeding is pretty easy as far as that's how my motivation works. So come up with these schemes. You know what I mean? And if the sketch comes out and they don't like it and they change their mind and they're not going to pay me, throw up the sketch as a YCH, as a your character here commission on one of your websites. Easy. You can still make money off of it. Any kind of scheme you can come up with to keep yourself honest is a good one. Because you will damage yourself. I have a friend who took a bunch of commissions a long time ago, and he's a talented artist. But he messed up. He took a bunch of commissions. He took a bunch of commissions for pictures and animations and all this stuff. He's up to his neck in the fandom for like thousands of dollars, and he's at the point where he can't get back into the fandom to possibly turn his art into a job, because everyone would say, "Hey, wait a minute," And he works kind of a job where he doesn't make much, just sort of a low skilled job. And so he's kind of stuck where he is. And, you think, well, the only way to work out of that is to find out who all you owe something to, and either pay them in money or pay them in commission or whatever. And it may take a year. It may take a year and a half. It may take 2 years. But that's something you're going to have to you're going to have to adult your way out of that if you want to get yourself out of this. My advice to you is never to let yourself get into that situation to begin with. Even if that means I'm only going to take 5 commissions at a time and do those 5 commissions, and then I'll take 5 more. Okay? Avoid getting that list where you have 150 people who are waiting on their commissions. Just avoid that. Okay? Your fans will appreciate it and they will notice it. Let's see. I think we're almost done. Be rewarding to your regular supporters and your patrons. We have Patreon now, which is an extremely valuable service for artists. And we have a lot of people who make a living on Patreon, myself included. The bulk of my income comes from Patreon. And you want to, if you're making a living on that, you want to keep that you want that to be your main focus. The people who actually bring, to use a phrase, skin to the game, the people who are actually supporting you and helping you do this full time, those are your priority. Okay? I remember when I first started, anyone else who complains about that can go to hell, because I remember because they're not really supporting you, they're just sucking it up and just sort of expectantly sitting back and just sort of demanding that you think. Now, I'm not saying ignore your free galleries. Keep those up. Whatever policy you think is good. If you want to do low-res pictures, if you want to do black and white pictures, I tend to let finished pictures sit for a year on Patreon, and then I may share some of them with in my public galleries. I do Patreon, I do Tumblr, and I do DeviantArt if DeviantArt has different posting rules, so I don't do all of it on DeviantArt. And sometimes I do it on my art-only Twitter if I have something to say about it. So yeah, keep that in mind. You want to get so you get my thoughts back on track here. This happens to me. This is what I do when I don't work with a script. So yeah, reward your patrons. I remember when I first started Patreon, someone said, yeah, I love it when artists turn into whores, really biting, shitty things. Well, fuck them. It doesn't matter. They're using guilt and altruism, which is a moral code I reject, and all kinds of other things to make you less happy, producing things so they can be more happy. Okay, that's a bad premise, and it's good understanding what premises are and where people try to abuse them and use them. And it's good understanding that. So it doesn't mean you ignore your free galleries, but it does mean that you prioritize definitely the people who want to support you. Okay, and because people who are willing to give you $1 or more a month, I mean, they really like your stuff, and they need to feel special, and they are special. They're good people that are behind you. They're the kinds of people who, no matter what website gallery goes tits up tomorrow, no matter what thing rejects you here and there, wherever it is you go after that, they're going to follow you and, oh, what's he doing next? I really like his stuff. Okay, that's who that is. So just to kind of wrap up and conclude, you want to focus on results. You want to focus on the eventuality of having a full body of work. You want to focus, think of it like, it's not completely analogous to building a house or a car, but it's a huge series of ongoing steps where you're getting better, you're formulating stories, you're building a canon world, you're world building, like all that stuff that you're doing, and slowly you have a fan base that is accumulating, and again, you're individuating your style. People are noticing that you are distinct. You're not just a clone of this popular artist or that guy. You are a fountain of your own of your own sort of original creations, your original characters, your original themes in your creations, and that takes years and years to develop and to build on. So, and I wish you luck in that endeavor. That's it for now. Y'all take care. Bye bye.